Hey everyone, and welcome to the next instalment of the Reuters Events CX webinar series. Today, our discussion is going to be based around the central theme of CX as the new revenue center, evolving care and strategy to unlock new opportunities. I'd like to extend a thank you to everyone joining us today, whether that's live with us now or whether you are watching the recorded session at some point in the future. We are really excited to have all of you with us today. While we wait for those of you who are still joining the webinar, I'm going to run through a few bits of housekeeping so that we can make sure things are running smoothly. If you're a regular attendee of our Reuters Events webinars, you're probably sick of hearing this by now, but for those of you joining us today for the first time, I'm Scott Cormack, the Global Event Director here at Reuters Events. I have the pleasure today to introduce an exciting panel of leaders who are joined us to share their expertise and discuss the topic in detail. We have been on a bit of a streak recently, and we're lucky enough to continue that today by welcoming a lineup of fantastic customer-centric leaders and also a couple of new faces as well, and one old for those of you who have been with us for a while. It's always exciting to be able to bring these new case studies and expertise to these discussions. So briefly, joining us today, we have Vicky Leslie, the Vice President of Digital Retail over at T-Mobile, Brandon Dickey, the Vice President of Account Management Operations at Comcast, and Michael Lauder, the Chief Experience Officer at today's partners, ASAP. Before we kick things off, I'd like to quickly run through some brief pieces of housekeeping. I'm pleased to be joined by a lot of our community today, all from a host of different countries and exciting brands. So to name a few, US Bank, Netflix, Capital One, American Express, Samsung. It's really great to have all of your expertise joining us today. As such, please do let us know using the chat function that you should see in the toolbar at the bottom of your screens if you have any questions that you would like to pose to the panel, or even any feedback and opinions you have on the discussion that we're having. We welcome all of that interaction and we'll be sure to incorporate it throughout the webinar. Finally, today's webinar will be recorded, so if you want to revisit any bits from today's discussion or review any highlights, please do keep an eye out for that in your inboxes over the next couple of days. But that's enough for me now. It's my pleasure to introduce our fantastic panel of experts and kick us off with today's discussion. So Vicky, I'm going to start with you and put you on the hot seat. Please introduce yourself to our audience today. Explain a little bit about the role that you have at T-Mobile and how that ties into today's topic.
Great. So yes, Vicky Leslie. I run, as Scott mentioned it was digital retail. We also call it virtual retail. So basically, it's the sales organization that's the extension of our retail stores, and we're basically building the infrastructure to ensure that consumers have the ability to virtually do everything that they would if they go into a retail store through digital capabilities, which then would also include our mobile experts that are there to assist. And so been in the industry for over 30 years, with half of that on the BPO side and the other half at Sprint T-Mobile. So glad to be here. Thank you.
Thanks for the introduction, Vicky, and obviously bringing a host of expertise with you, and really excited to have you on the panel today. I'm going to go around clockwise. Brandon, you're up next on my screen. So why don't you, again, give us a little bit of background on yourself, your role, and how that ties to today's session.
Great. Thanks, Scott. Brandon Dickey, I'm with Comcast. I work on the customer experience team at Comcast. My role is customer experience strategy, account management operations, which means the portion of our care organization that supports customers, existing customers, making changes to their accounts, repackaging, looking for new product services. I have about 13 years experience at Comcast, 18 in total in the industry. I've held various sales, marketing, and operations roles, but really looking forward to talking with you all today.
Thanks, Brandon, and likewise, great to have your expertise with us today. And obviously, it's nice to have that sort of contrast between yourself on the more CX and operational side, and Vicky, yourself on the more revenue retail side, but sharing those commonalities there. And tying us all together, Michael, I'm going to let you introduce yourself for some old faces and people that have been with us for a while. They might recognize you, but for those who are new, please do introduce yourself and your role at ASAP.
Sure. Michael Lauder. I'm the Chief Experience Officer at ASAP. I've been here about a year. My responsibility is really to manage all of our customer relationships, but Also, as what we call a practitioner, I actually spent most of my career on the other side, running service and experience organizations at places like Apple and EA and Samsung. And I started my career as a call center agent. So I've always been a real passionate advocate of that really tough and important job that the frontline agents are doing for all of your organizations. So good to be here. Look forward to the conversation.
Thanks, Michael. And yeah, that rounds out our panel today. I'm really excited to have all of your expertise here, and thank you for sharing your time. So I know when I've had conversations with you all across the last couple of weeks that we have a lot of ground to cover here, so I'm not going to waste any more time in sort of diving into that. But as I had the discussions with you all over the last couple of weeks, we talked about some general questions and really sort of the entry point into this idea of CX being the new revenue center. And one of the things that I spoke about with all of you was over the last 18 months in particular, CX has become a real key brand differentiator, especially as we look now towards recovery and growth from the last 18 months. The importance of CX has only grown, and sort of that idea of creating customer lifetime value. So I wanted to start the conversation off by asking how have you seen CX move into the heart of your business strategy within your respective organizations? So Michael, I'm gonna come back to you to take us around the other way this time. But yeah, how does that work with your clients that you've seen over the last sort of 18 months and that effect with the CX moving into the heart of strategy?
Yeah, I mean, there's no question with the pandemic that the world has changed in terms of how customers interact with brands, and it's become a lot more digital. The idea of digital acceleration and transformation was, one of the few, bright spots in a tough, 18 months. And I think with that comes higher customer expectations as, they experience more and more of their engagement with brands digitally and virtually. And I also think that as businesses become a little more commoditized, you start to see a need to differentiate across the products and services that a company might offer. And what we've been seeing with a lot of our customers is customer experience is becoming one of those points where they're trying to make customer service and customer experience a real kind of feature of their products and services that they offer, in an area where they can really add to the value proposition that they have for their brand, and really make this kind of notion of customer obsession or customer centricity core to their strategy. That's what we're seeing a lot, Scott, with the customers that we're helping.
Yeah, for sure, and I think that's concurrent across our events as well. Obviously, I'm sure you know that we ran a flagship US event just back in June, and one of the real core components and core topics that came out of that whole event was the idea of customer centricity and how do we build that within our organizations, and that really was testament to CX moving into the heart of business and not really being a fringe. One of the things that I saw while sort of researching this topic and preparing for today was a quote that I really liked, and I wanted to share that with everyone, was that CX isn't a department, it's a philosophy within businesses, and that's really testament to it moving and being in the DNA across multiple silos, whether it's marketing, whether it's sales, whether it's customer support. So yeah, that really sort of sums that up, and I think you've summed that up nicely, Michael. Brandon, I know over at Comcast, you guys have been placing a lot of emphasis on customer experience and customer support over the last 18 months and how that ties in. Do you want to share a little bit about that and how that's working for you guys?
Yeah, I would love to. Yeah, we have a saying internally at Comcast that CX should be our best product. It really is central to the business strategy. It's not a nice to have or a nice to focus on. It's a must have, and we feel like the CX strategy and the business strategy can't be separated. We do have a unique strategy for CX informed by customers. It's regularly measured and tracked to ensure that we're keeping our finger on the pulse of what customers want and need. And the pandemic was a great example of our CX and business strategy in action. 90% of what we did for customers to be able to meet the moment, particularly in digital, was an acceleration of our 3-year roadmap. We were able to accelerate because we had a plan driven by customer insights, the mechanism already in place, which is the Net Promoter System, for making sure that we were executing on the things most important to our customers during that time.
Yeah, for sure. And I know, having spoke with you, that net promoter system and the way that you guys are working that is something that we're going to touch on in more detail a little bit later on in the discussion. Vicky, obviously taking a slightly different approach and coming at it from a more sales revenue side of things. How have you seen that move together with CX, and how has that sort of come together with the sales team over at T-Mobile?
Yeah, I think that the biggest, and not necessarily a change, and more of, really emphasizing the misconception that, when you think about customer experience, you think about your existing customer base, when, in reality, that starts when, individuals are looking to figure out who they want to do business with. And so just having that keen focus on the fact that, customer satisfaction has to start with whether or not they buy from you, because it's your brand, right? And so having that experience be a positive one, regardless of what happens during the sales process. And the other piece is eliminating the need to think about experience as a metric that needs to be rewarded and be part of the compensation plan. Honestly, it's table stakes, right? You hire folks that come to you with customer experience skills that are needed, because there are some things that are just not trainable, and ensuring that, just like there's a correlation between customer experience metrics and companies' retention, it holds true for employees. So having the right culture, having the right employee base, and investing in that part of the company actually then translates into ensuring you have really high customer satisfaction, in terms of what your agents are doing, whether it's selling or servicing.
Yeah, for sure. And that's brought me on nicely to something that I wanted to discuss. Obviously, a key part of the webinar today is around the CX as the new revenue center, but we obviously can't forget that a really huge part of that and the efforts behind support and sales and customer experience as well is the human agent. So in terms of one of the key topics being empowering our agents to provide that customer satisfaction and provide that expectation and that baseline at every interaction with our customers. How are you empowering the agents, whether it's with technology solutions or whether it's with tools? How are you empowering them to bring an improvement to the support or sales teams that you guys are in charge of? Vicky, I'll come to you there because I know you had a few bits to add there.
Yeah, so when we measure customer satisfaction, right, there's two areas that we measure. It's what was the experience with the mobile expert or the agent that you interacted with, and then there's the other metric of whether you recommend, whether it's NPS or how are you then evaluating the company. And so, but the entire survey then falls back on the agent. So really listening to the feedback that our frontline agents are giving us in terms of what prevents them from being able to deliver very low effort and high satisfaction, and then also listening to the voices of our customers. I mean, there's a direct correlation between the effort and the ease it takes to accomplish something. And so taking that feedback and then investing in the right tools on the front end. And a lot of that ties into technology and making sure you've got the, for chat as an example being the sales tool, the artificial intelligent tools that help simplify the job for the mobile expert to ensure that they, the speed to service is shortened, as well as being able to deliver then a much higher satisfied customer at the end of that. So technology is a big one, but also ensuring the continued training, throughout the life cycle of our employees.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that you've absolutely summed up all the key points that I think we're planning to hit on there today in one answer. So that's very commendable of you. And we'll touch on some of those points in more depth a little bit later. But Michael, coming around to you for your opinions. And I know Vicky mentioned there sort of AI and chat and things like that. That's very much up your street at ASAP. And yeah, why don't you tell us a little bit how you're seeing them tools being utilized to boost efficiency, and also, like Vicky says, it's all about the ease and the effort sort of trade-off there. So tell us a little bit about that and how you're seeing that across your clients and implementation?
Yeah, there's not one customer that we have that we work with that isn't thinking about or in need of growing the digital part of their business. And as this digital acceleration takes hold, immediately the question comes in of technology to not only manage the interaction, but do it where customers already are. So being able to engage with customers, whether it's a sales or a service use case, in the same places they talk to their friends and family. So we're seeing this sort of proactive strategy of engaging customers with the least effort possible, as Vicky mentioned. And I think there's a lot of emerging technologies like ASAP that are AI focused and building machine learning capabilities that kind of tackle both of those challenges, both the efficiency piece of making it easier for the agents to serve more customers and making it lower effort and easier for the customer to get help, and also delivering a better quality experience across that journey they're having with a company's product or service. And there's a what we're seeing with our customers is we're able to attack both of those vectors. We're able to do what I call a silver bullet, which is actually increase the quality of service you're delivering, but also do it more efficiently. This is a really interesting time where you can use technology to drive faster time to proficiency and start creating a bit more of a universal agent where you can scale a lot more efficiently as the world goes a little bit more digital.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's sort of the crux, isn't it, of we now have these technologies within our means and within our grasp that can not only improve our operational side of things and make sure that agents are augmented effectively and can really excel in their jobs, whether it's increasing their sort of call efficiency or whether it's increasing the load and being able to take some of those sort of lower complex issues and taking those away from the agent and making sure they can focus on providing a really exemplary service for those more complex issues. Brandon, I'm going to come on to you, and I can see you nodding. I know this is something that we talked about in depth when we were chatting earlier in the week, and you were really keen to talk about how Comcast are leveraging technology to evolve CX and also to get employees to expand beyond their role of just support. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I would add on to everything that was said, which are really great points, that we are leveraging our strength in technology and AI ML to make the digital experience feel more human and personalized. I think one of the lessons across all industries during the pandemic was the importance of building the empathy, that human experience into the digital experiences, digital itself not being enough, it needing to be more personalized. And we're using AI ML to make digital act like humans, not to replace humans. But what we're doing is bringing together the best of the technology and then the best of our people to create the experience that it is all of that. And so, for example, our Xfinity Assistant, we pulled together a project called Team Turbo. For example, there are 660,000 different ways that a customer can ask the Xfinity Assistant just general support questions, 155,000 different ways that customers ask specifically about internet connectivity. So we brought together our best care agents, engineers, designers, developers to apply then the tech, the AI, the ML to that experience and train our Xfinity Assistant on different ways customers can ask those questions. And then what are the right ways, what are the numbers of ways to respond as closely as possible to the way that our best agents do.
And is that something that you guys have implemented now and are seeing the results of, or is that something that's sort of in the works at the moment?
Yeah, no, that is implemented as we speak. I mean, we've seen a 500% increase in usage of our Xfinity Assistant going into from pre-pandemic to now.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously, I imagine off the bat, and obviously not having the expertise and the ins and outs on your end, but as Michael and Vicky have mentioned as well earlier, that's really down to the last 18 months, that sort of digital transformation and sort of being flung into the digital world. And that's sort of the customer expectation now. They'd like to engage on these digital channels, and we've certainly seen a rise in that. I assume that's the thinking behind that, and you've seen obviously great uptake on that.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
For sure. So I want to come round now to Michael. You talked a lot about the historical role of an agent when we were speaking earlier in the week, and you were quite keen to have an overview of that and how it's changing, and also why it needs to change. And I think this is a good time to talk about this. Obviously, we talked about the technology that we can help augment our agents with, but as Brandon alluded to there, it's also about humanizing that digital age and making sure that the human agents still have a focus. So why don't you sort of speak to that a little bit, and obviously your background as being one of those call center agents, that you've got the most experience there to
Yeah.
expand on that.
Yeah, I love what Brandon said. Kind of helping agents act like humans rather than replacing humans. And I think using your frontline agents to help train your automated the automated intents and components of your assistant is awesome. Yeah, I think, I mean, I very clearly remember my days as a call center agent at Apple around the time Steve Jobs came back, and I remember it being a really hard job, kind of a thankless job, lots of different systems and processes and tools and stuff like that. And I think that technology can not only help agents be more effective at solving problems, it also can be used as a training tool. It can be used to help supervisors and coaches manage quality. It can be used to predict what a customer satisfaction score would be, and really give the power to the agents. Truthfully, agents really just want to help customers and solve problems. And so many things have historically, been in their way. And so, this idea that ASAP has of making every agent your best agent is a combination, actually, of both technology and advances in machine learning and AI, but also, process reengineering, to be able to ensure that your agents have all the things that they need to be able to serve customers when they need help. So it is. Technology is never by itself, the silver bullet, but I think it's a great opportunity when brands are trying to differentiate themselves and trying to stand out in the market. And, companies like Comcast and T-Mobile are great examples where, they're known for, taking care of their customers. And it's obviously been, good for their business to do that. And I think we're just seeing more and more of that as the world changes a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely agree with everything you said there, and I think that the role of the agents just cannot be understated. Obviously, Vicky, I'm going to come to you next. Obviously, sales. We spoke, and you were talking about how sales is really incorporated into all interactions with the customer now, especially for you guys at T-Mobile, and that's been a big shift for companies to consider. And I really liked the question that you asked when we spoke, was how do we service to sell, and how are you really going at that and attacking that challenge?
Yeah. So and this dynamic started changing, many years ago, where companies, when you look at how to reduce expenses and costs, the costs always fall in the service organization, right? In care, right? You're not driving revenue. So really changing the dynamic of it's okay to service and then pivot and transition into sales, right? And so and I think the consumers also expect it, but taking the approach that sales is actually servicing your customers. So truly identifying their needs and one, obviously resolving what they came to you for first, but then solution selling in terms of, are they on the right plan? Do they have all the different upsells that the company currently has available to them, and how will that change their current reliance on you? So knowing that consumers, right, the more they have with a particular company, the more reliant they are on different parts of their livelihood, the higher their life is with you. So really changing the dynamic in how you hire in terms of agents having the ability to service and then pivot into sales, but taking the approach of this isn't hardcore sales, this is ensuring you're servicing your customer and making sure they're aware of everything your company has to offer. And then, even more importantly, sharing, the why and the impact of, somebody who is able to feel comfortable with all aspects of the relationship with the company. As an example, if you go to buy a refrigerator, or in my world a wireless phone, and something happens, and if you're not insured, that's a much bigger, and insurance is not the right word to use, but if the effort of resolving that issue is so much easier for you, then you're more inclined, one, to stay longer with the company, but two, your satisfaction in all interaction, sales and service, stays at that highest level. So I kind of went around in a circle there, Scott, but at the end of the day, it truly is in ensuring that we're treating sales as a service function and ensuring we're training to ensure that's happening.
For sure, and I really like that idea that obviously sales is an interaction with your customer, and by nature it is servicing them. And that you touched on something there that we spoke about at length, and that was the talent and retention and the development of those agents and you, or mobile experts as you guys call them, and you talked about a 3-step process that you have in terms of that. So do you want to expand on that a little bit more and really take us through the steps of what it looks like to hire those mobile experts that have that support and sales acumen, but also how you train them in that expertise of the business and those different areas?
Yeah, absolutely. So understanding that no two employees are created the same, right? So when it comes to hiring, identifying what is the minimum threshold. There are certain skill sets that someone needs to possess because they're not trainable, and it might be being able to identify when to be empathetic, or communication skills, just having the basis. So identifying the minimum skill requirement to allow entry into the interview process. And then from there, ensuring that, I'm a strong believer in having the frontline leaders be part of the recruiting and the interviewing process, allowing them to hire their future teams and their team members, but then being able to identify from that point the level of training individuals may need. So being able to customize the training, knowing that there's a vast amount of trainable skills. So we don't go and just look for sales individuals that have been there and done it, because they can come with bad habits. But on the flip side, you can get raw talent and mold, but those two individuals need two different types of training. So customizing the training to ensure that you're setting your staff up for success. And then the third piece is the ongoing support, ongoing training, making sure that's part of their life cycle, both in terms of what's pushed, but also what's available for them to go and get and do on their own for their own career development. So all of that will be of zero value if we're not retaining our employees, because we all know the investment in hiring, training, and onboarding. So just ensuring that culture, the employee satisfaction, that has got to be a big part of an organization. The longer you keep your employees, the better they're going to perform. But we've all seen that a satisfied workforce delivers a much higher value and experience in their results. It's just proven over and over again.
Yeah, for sure. And we've got a question in the chat that's just come in from Alexandra, who's asked if the training that you offer is via WBT or VILT. I don't know whether that's something that you're aware of or whether it's specifically internal training that you guys have. But if you'd just like to share a little bit about that for that question from Alexandra.
Sure. I would probably refer to it as a hybrid model. We do, there are absolutely web-based courses but it is all instructor led. So having that human interface with new hires is very important. Obviously, we all went through learning curves during COVID and during the the 100% virtual stages, but even then ensuring you had cameras on, you had that face-to-face interaction. So it is a hybrid model where everything is online, but it is instructor led. And then even more importantly, just having those methods to check for understanding, especially when you're in a virtual environment, because you're not there. You don't see as easily when people are struggling or having questions because everyone's remote. But having that check of understanding through assessments and just making sure you're doing knowledge checks throughout the entire training period.
Sure. Thanks for answering that. And Alexandra, I hope that's answered your question. Brandon, I saw you nodding along when Vicky was talking about talent and retention and training there. Is it similar process that you guys have over at Comcast? Obviously, you're coming from a more sales side, but you are account management. So there's that process of sort of aftercare and things like that there as well. So is it a similar process that you're seeing over at Comcast and a similar thing to what Vicky has just described?
It is, yeah, very similar. I think Vicky hit on a lot of really important points. A few things that I'll try to add on. One is, just building on her point about the employee satisfaction and ensuring that we stay centered on that and focused on that. As part of our Net Promoter System, we do, our relationship NPS surveys to our customers, a random sampling of the entire customer base. We do transactional surveying as well, depending on what channel the customer is interacting with to get the feedback on that particular channel. But we also do employee NPS surveys, and we stay very focused on what is the workplace satisfaction, what is the motivation of the workforce, how are they feeling about our products. And there's a lot of feedback that comes out of those that we leverage heavily, both to improve policies, processes, products, but also to keep our finger on the pulse of, are we keeping the workforce engaged, motivated, and delivering that great experience that Vicky referred to as being the ultimate product. And I would build on also the kind of service to sales element and say there's two lenses that I view that through. One is we leverage technology to help with that, a little bit of AI, ML here in this respect as well. There's lots of things that we could talk about on every interaction with our customers. And so we try to guide the employees with what is the most relevant product or service or and it's not always sales. Sometimes it's just product engagement. What product does the customer have that it appears that maybe they're not as engaged with, and they could get more value from the relationship with Comcast if they engaged in that product that they have. And what's equally as important as making the right recommendation is making suppressions when necessary. And what I mean by that is we don't want to sell on experiences where there's an unresolved service issue. And so trying to also guide our employees on when to focus on service. When we have a customer who's had ongoing recurring issues, let's make sure we solve problems. And we're only talking about other products or product engagement on the interactions where we know the customer is in a good state, we've solved all their issues, we've answered all their questions. And the second part of it is, we train our employees on lots of behaviors that we want them to exhibit. Not lots, but enough for them to focus on a few. One of the key is being a product ambassador. And I think that's where that transition from service into the product really comes to life. And if I could steal a quote, I heard Shep Hyken talk and say, you're missing the opportunity for a moment of magic if you miss an opportunity to talk to a customer about one of your products. And so being that product ambassador and taking advantage of those moments to review the customer's current subscription and talk to them about new products that we may have launched since the last time they've dealt with us, interacted with us, and see how else we can add value to, again, their relationship with Comcast, their household entertainment needs, et cetera.
Yeah, for sure. And I love the piece you said there about the agent being a brand ambassador at every opportunity and every interaction. Obviously, that is the huge benefit of those human interactions and face-to-face interactions, is that they can be that brand ambassador and really really take that interaction to the next level. But the baseline that I'm hearing that you're talking about there is really centered around data and being able to have that customer data, but also the employee data to be able to provide those more personalized services and really through that increase that customer satisfaction and experience. So like you mentioned, being able to see when your last interaction was with that customer and what products have launched since then that could be applicable for them, or if there is a current problem with one of their services, obviously use that information to inform the agent to be more on the service side. Michael, that's something that I wanted to come along to you with obviously the encapsulation of data and this voice of the customer and voice of the employee sort of comparison there. I know this was something that ASAP were keen to discuss. So yeah, I'll come to you on that one to get your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, everything that I've heard is right on point, and it's taking me back to my glory days as an agent. And I think the old saying that happy employees equals happy customers is kind of one of the core tenets of ASAP, and one of the reasons why I'm here is we're focused on making people better, not eliminating people. And so I think that's really at the core of what we're trying to do, and in partnership with many companies that we work with. I think that getting the intelligence from your customers on how you are doing and from your employees on how you're doing is really important. The challenge with that, Scott, is that your customers are not always going to tell you, and you cannot always rely on a survey that generally has a pretty low response rate to give you a full picture of how your business is performing and how your team is performing. The same is true of internally how you manage the quality of service that you're delivering. It's impossible to scale to be able to measure the impact. And so this is again where I think machine learning and augmentation comes into play, and being able to use technology to predict based on your own survey or your own internal evaluation scores what a customer would tell you about the service they received or the experience they received, or what an internal evaluator or coach would have scored an agent on a particular interaction. It's really exciting, and it's a huge transformational moment where a lot of practitioners are kind of starting to ask the question, where is this all going, and where is the line drawn between this sort of emerging technology and the things that we have in our stack already. And it's all really, I'll just speak for ASAP, focused on making the person interfacing with your customer more empowered and more effective and more successful at helping the customer do whatever it is that they do. So it's really it's exciting to hear from Vicki and Brandon the things that they're focused on, and in some ways with all this technology, it really comes down to helping these agents be successful and making sure that they have the things they need to do so.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that harks back to, I believe it was something that myself and Vicky spoke about, which was how it's really exciting that the tools and the technology that's available to us now are making every agent our best agent, and really being able to put our best foot forward at every interaction. So one of the things that we touched on there, and Vicky and Brandon, I apologize in advance, but I'm going to put you on the spot here. One of the things that Michael mentioned was that it is difficult to sort of see the outcome of the customer feedback and the employee feedback. Is there any sort of examples that jump out to you guys of where that customer feedback or the employee feedback has refined a process or a particular sort of area of your support or sales strategy? I'll leave that open if someone wants to take that one.
Yeah, I mean, I can give a recent example, and then Brandon can definitely jump in if I jump too soon, Brandon. So again, learning through the virtual environment, wireless sales without having that voice aspect can be overwhelming, right? To a prospective customer, because you're talking about different sizes of phones, and just being able to conceptualize what they're talking about. And so as we, identified, hearing from the customers of, why maybe they didn't buy, because that's one of the gaps is, when you have a prospective customer, you don't have, at least we didn't have surveys into when they're not buying, right? You survey them because now they've become a customer. So really looking into those consumers that walk away, and digging into the data. And this is where, the speech analytics or, being able to transcribe using a chat platform, everything that's happening in those conversations, and then coming back with feedback to solve. So using that method, we had identified, a challenge with the credit applications. It was a very cumbersome process. Forms were failing, and there wasn't a reporting to tell us that other than the employee and customer voices. And so actually being able to enhance that process reduced our average handle time by 20%, and increased the employee satisfaction because we no longer were having errors. The forms were getting submitted through, and it was just a simple fix using technology through the chat platform. So that's just one example I'll throw out there.
Yeah, for sure. It's always great to hear how that customer and especially the employee, because I think sometimes the employee feedback gets a little bit overshadowed by the customer feedback. And at the end of the day, like we've said multiple times throughout this webinar, that as the front line of interactions with your customers and filling out the processes and carrying them out themselves, they are often sort of a gold mine for that insight of how do we refine, how do we improve processes that will ultimately improve not only their satisfaction but the customers as well. Brandon, is there an example that you guys have had recently where that's come to fruition?
Yeah, absolutely. And there are many examples. We have as part of our Net Promoter system that we have deployed, it includes team huddles where we regularly encourage elevations and the feedback. So we're actively, not passively, trying to extract that feedback from employees and encourage those elevations. And sometimes they are elevations that are solved locally, and they can be things like, making the call centers more accessible, solving, loose door handles on the restrooms in the call center. But there's a systematic process for elevating those that are, more enterprise, more platform related, product related, enterprise policy related. And one example is we got a lot of feedback. It became a top 25 elevation, which is a kind of a classification that we have that really helps usher some of these ideas through our prioritization process. And it was about consolidating a lot of our connectivity apps. We had several apps, customer-facing apps, for managing your internet connection, doing troubleshooting, viewing your bill, some of our Xfi service where you can pause, internet and Wi-Fi to devices. And the feedback was, customers are getting confused on which app they're supposed to use for which service. Can we just consolidate and create one single app? And so we're in the process of consolidating and rationalizing those apps. We're building more and more functionality into our Xfinity app and beginning to sunset some of the other apps that have redundant, functionality in the spirit of a more streamlined customer experience, but all got originated from our employee elevation process.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously that's a great example of refining the process and really cutting away some of the sort of dead weight in the customer journey and making it, like you say, as streamlined as possible. Michael, I'm going to come to you with a question that's in the chat. It's initially Miguel from who's tuning in from Guatemala City. So thank you for joining us, Miguel. But Miguel's question was: don't you think that as more bots replace human agents, the average or the answer speed average will reduce, and customers will start demanding faster response times? Miguel's question is: will this affect the operations with both bots and human agents? I suppose in that sort of synergy between the two.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think as at ASAP, we call this independent automation, where the customer's helping themselves, or directed automation, where the technology is helping the agent. actually what we see over time is that the simpler issues that are typically shorter are being automated. Actually, that translates into longer handle times, at least in the context of a care or service interaction, because you're left with the more complicated interactions that require humans to serve. And so, I think that it definitely changes the dynamic in terms of how you measure success in your business across that whole kind of spectrum of the customer journey. But actually, a phenomenon that we see pretty routinely with our customers is that as they improve the self-service capabilities of automation, something you traditionally in this business don't want to see, which is increased handle time, is this natural outcome of dealing with more complicated issues, which you can then kind of start to think about how to augment or automate over time, or give agents better tools to support customers with those more complicated issues. So I definitely see it changing the paradigm. Personally, I see this less about eliminating humans and more about using the investments traditionally in customer service to, as Vicki and Brandon have talked about, engage with that customer across the life cycle proactively. It may not be that you're just waiting for them to contact you when they want to buy something or when they need help, but being able to kind of build that relationship across the life cycle of the customer. And, we know as practitioners, or former practitioners in my case, that when you deliver great service, it increases a customer's lifetime value. And we also know the opposite is true. And so I think it's really empowering with technology agents to be able to support customers, which what will be more and more complicated issues actually as time goes on.
Yeah, for sure, and that's definitely an interesting angle. Obviously, you don't often associate the use of the technology, and obviously it's well versed that that's getting rid of sort of the smaller issues and the ones that are less complex. But obviously that does by nature increase sort of the resolution time where they are human agents are dealing with the more complex issues. That leads me on to something that we spoke about that I found really interesting in our conversation, Michael. And that was that you were telling me that customer expectations have obviously drastically changed over the course of the pandemic and as we move into the post-pandemic. You said that within some of your clients, you'd seen that this had actually caused these changed expectations had caused customer satisfaction scores to drop in some cases. Can you expand a little bit on that and give us a little bit of background there? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little bit of what we've been talking about in that both the acceleration of digital experiences that customers are becoming more comfortable with, and with the pandemic, are really driving some of these changes in expectations. I think expectations have already, frankly, even before the pandemic, been going up. When I can order something from a company and have it delivered the same day, suddenly I want everything delivered the same day. And anytime I'm not getting something delivered the same day, my expectations have not been met. And so I think that certainly predated the pandemic, but I think with the pandemic and the acceleration of digital, expectations have just gone up even higher. And so a pretty common phenomenon we're seeing is that while organizations are getting better at the quantitative metrics, being more efficient, being able to serve more customers faster, and technologies in part, are responsible for that. We're also seeing, with all the other vectors being the same, the quality of service being challenged. There's probably many variables that go into that, Scott, but I think a big one is frankly that customer expectations are evolving. And I would also say that the demographic of customer is changing and they are becoming less loyal, just at a sort of a Gen Z, sort of a level and millennial level. And so those customers are much more easily abandoning brands when their expectations are not met. So I think you see a combination of these things driving this phenomenon of service quality dipping when the other metrics are staying the same or getting better.
Yeah, for sure. And on that topic of obviously brand loyalty and almost the attention spans of the younger generation for these brands. As soon as there's one bad experience, they're gone, and you've lost them. And that ties back into, like we were talking about, providing a great customer experience, a great customer satisfaction. That really ties into that customer lifetime value and really promoting loyalty. I mean, I think as we talked about, providing great service through an agent or a tech solution as well, that really provides that experience that makes them want to come back and makes them feel sort of really involved. And like you said, it's an opportunity for your service agents to be brand ambassadors on that front. And what you said there really reminded me of something that we had a speaker from the Vice President of Customer Experience from Safelite Auto Glass at our event in June. And she was talking about the same thing you mentioned there, Michael, where people are so ingrained and used to getting a delivery in one day now from the likes of Amazon or whoever it may be, that suddenly that has to be the baseline entry for a lot of people within different industries and completely different industries. And that's really led to that customer expectation going really sky high. And we have to meet that as the baseline in order to latch onto that now and attract that customer.
Yeah, customers are not measuring their expectations based on the service you're delivering as a company. They're measuring the experience based on every service experience that they have, and they're expecting every brand they engage with to be to meet or exceed their expectations. So it's a fun challenge to solve.
Yeah, for sure. And that's sort of the battleground that we find ourselves in at the moment, and what's sort of providing the competitive edge is how do we exceed those expectations. It's almost not even a case of meeting the expectations now. It's the focus has to be on exceeding them, which, as I'm sure you're all aware within your own separate roles, is the battle at the moment. Vicky and Michael, Vicky and Brandon, sorry, I'm going to bring you guys into the discussion because we had similar chats within our talks, and we talked about sort of the different ways in which we speak with customers and interact with them. So the omni-channel approach. Obviously, Vicky, you're dealing with all of the digital channels. How have you seen those knit together, and what sort of omni-channel approach are you taking at T-Mobile?
Yeah, so, and I think Michael hit it right on the head, when he said, being able to service or meet the customers, right, where they want to be met. I think that's the approach that we're continuing, to go down. And so the idea that, hey, they're on the website and they're reaching out for help. And at that point, it is our job to either help them finish, if they wanted to finish digitally, set up the order for them, set up an appointment for the retail store, right? What does the consumer want? And just ensuring that just like having the omni-channel approach for the consumers to go to, we need to ensure our agents feel, hey, regardless of which path I take, I win. And the consumer wins, right? Where, a lot of times the salesperson wins if they close the sale, right? Even though that person may really have wanted to just go into the retail store. And so, just having that right foundation set up to ensure that, we're doing everything we can to deliver what we're saying, down to the mobile expert. The other piece is, ensuring that, we use it when we talk about empowering our front line, it's more than just the tools to ensure things aren't failing or locking up or latency. It truly also is having things like the difference between asynchronous and synchronous chat, right? Having that data, like to be able to chat with a consumer and see the interaction that, that they have had, whether it was the same agent or elsewhere, that right there is empowering. Being able to maybe have the information at hand to say, okay, so I see you've looked at all these devices online, and you were really, really interested in this, versus expecting the person to start all over, because now you have visibility into their entire journey by the time they got to you. So those are the types of investments in technology that really will help make things seamless for the consumer on the other end, but also make our agents just feel, like there's a super salesperson and they have everything at their fingertips. So a combination of all of that is really the direction and the path we're continuing to go down.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously, I think you summed it up there with it's all about providing that seamless experience for the customer. But as we've mentioned, the empowering agents, I think Brandon, you mentioned it earlier in the discussion about having that sort of history and backlog and data available for every interaction that you've had with the customer, and using that as sort of the leaping off point rather than, like Vicky says, starting again and having to go through that same process and annoy the customer that way by having to get them to repeat all this information for the fourth or the fifth time. Brandon, I know this is something that you care strongly about over at Comcast and you're putting real effort behind. I know you sort of described it as the boundaries between digital and physical disappearing, and that omni-channel, that no matter where your customer starts their journey, the challenge for you guys and the question is, how do you ensure that every channel knits together to reach that resolution and customer satisfaction in the best way possible, and obviously the role that the agents play as a part of that. Do you want to expand a little bit more about how that's working at Comcast and where you've seen successes there?
Yeah, it's very similar to what Vicky said. I mean, I think we're on a very, very similar path. What we're not trying to do is just push to digital, but evolving all the channels so that they're working together to guide towards resolution. You said it, blending the digital and the physical worlds. We feel like that's the future. It's a much more fluid and intuitive experience. So today, the way that we've got our experience built, and we continue to invest and evolve in this space, is, a customer can make an appointment through our app or through a website. They'll get a text message confirming the appointment. They can reschedule, cancel, or move that appointment via text message, via SMS. So then a tech arrives to the home in person. Everything gets set up. Later on, they can reach out with questions, troubleshoot, check speeds through the Xfinity Assistant, in the product, in the app. We have forums. We have digital care team on Twitter, Facebook Messenger, and other social media outlets. They can call us, et cetera, go into a retail store. So yeah, it really is, we know digital is a non-negotiable. We all learned that, but it really is us trying to blend now the digital and the physical worlds and meet the customer where they are and where they want to be.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you took the words out of my mouth there that I was going to use to sum that up. It's all about meeting the customer where they want to be and where they want to be met. And it's really about where they see that convenience. Vicky, I'm sure that's something that you have on the digital side, and like you mentioned, asynchronous and synchronous forms of communication. It's all about the convenience and the ease of the interaction for the customer. I know we're running right up against the time now, so I'm going to do one final around the horn really quickly just to get everyone's opinions. And it's really simply relating back to the topic of the discussion. What's one piece of advice that you'd give those in the audience looking to begin evolving their service and sales team to unlock new revenue opportunities? Michael, I'm going to put you on the hot seat first. What is your top piece of advice for people starting out this journey of unlocking new revenue within their CX teams?
Yeah. Just quickly, I think that we've often in our roles running service and experience organizations been viewed as a cost center. And one of the pieces of advice that I share a lot, that I experienced myself, that was really effective, was being able to actually prove the impact that good service has on your business. We actually literally know that when you, as I said earlier, deliver a great experience to a customer, it's literally improving the bottom line. It's increasing the customer's lifetime value. We also know that if you don't deliver a great experience, the opposite happens. And so I think getting smart about building cohorts and being able to over time measure the impact of service starts to get the entire company sort of rallying around and becoming advocates to the frontline worker. The other thing that I've done frequently is bring executives to contact centers and have them sit and listen to calls and even talk to customers, and you really see their eyes get big and light up and become advocates across the company for the importance of taking care of customers. So it's a couple of things that I've done in my career.
Yeah, for sure. And I think Vicky's had to jump off or has had some connectivity issues. So Brandon, that means you're up next. I'll put you on the hot seat to take us into this final stretch.
Yeah, and Vicky and I have been in sync on this one, so maybe I'm answering for both of us. But I really think it goes back to my last answer. If I was to give one piece kind of actionable insight or advice, it's really about evolving the channels so that they're working together to guide towards resolution, digital and assisted. Vicky mentioned the context sharing from channels so the customers don't have to repeat themselves, so that it feels like a seamless experience as they jump from channel to channel. I really feel like that's the future. You know, digital again is a non-negotiable. I think we all accept that, but I think now the next evolution is making the digital and the assisted channels all work together.
Yeah, for sure. And I think to sum up, I know that you mentioned there that yourself and Vicky have been very close throughout this whole discussion. But I think it's really interesting to see that yourself from sort of a more support background and Vicky from more of the sales background, the similarities are so close. And obviously that is testament to us sort of weaving support and sales closer together and obviously unlocking new opportunities between the two. Vicky, I see you're back now, so I'm going to put you on the hot seat for the last couple of seconds. What's one really quick piece of advice that you'd give to those attendees?
Sorry about that, guys.
That's okay.
Yeah, do not waver on investing in culture and employee satisfaction. I mean, that's the key, that's the foundation. So yeah, employee satisfaction, company culture, and you can't go wrong with everything you try to implement and deliver.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for jumping back on, Vicky. I know there's some technical issues sometimes on these that we can't oversee. Well, that's part and parcel of it now. But that does wrap up today's webinar. I know we've covered a lot of ground there and discussed incredibly important topics and seen the similarities and the differences. There was some fantastic insight and definitely a number of things that I'm keen to explore in more depth with today's panelists, if you haven't had enough of me already. Vicky, Brandon and Michael, I want to extend a massive thank you to all of you for lending us your time and expertise today. And finally, I'd like to thank Michael and today's sponsors, ASAP, for working with us to create this hugely successful webinar. If you would like to check out what they have to offer and some of the things that Michael's talked about today, please do head over to www.asap.com or look out for more details that will be attached alongside the recording of today's webinar. And last but not least, I'd like to thank each and every one of you who have joined us live today, asked questions, engaged with us, or those of you who will be listening on demand. I hope you have enjoyed the session and you've gained some actionable takeaways that you can go and implement within your own service and sales strategies. For those of you who may have missed it, we have recently launched our end-of-year flagship event, Customer Service and Experience Global, which is due to take place on October 5th and 6th. For this event, we're offering free limited access passes exclusively to those who have attended our webinars. And so if you're involved, if you're wanting to be involved in that, please do look out for details of how to apply for that pass in the coming weeks. But for now, thank you from all of us at Reuters Events. Thank you to Michael, Brandon and Vicky for joining us. And we hope to welcome you back soon. Have a lovely day, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.